afternoon. Thank you so much for joining us this afternoon. I'm your host, Camille Thurman, and we have a special fun thing that's going to happen today. We're having a jazz vocal summit featuring some of the most dynamic vocalists of today. Please give a warm welcome to Sheila Jordan, Dee Bridgewater, and Kurt Elling. So we're going to start this session right away because there's a lot we got to talk about, and I know we only have a short amount of time. Is that okay? I'm going to do a real quick introduction for each vocalist because you need to hear their accomplishments. They're phenomenal. Sheila Jordan, 2011 NEA Jazz Master, born in Detroit, Michigan, and raised in Summerhill, Pennsylvania. She began singing as a child, and by the time she was in her early teens, she was working semi-professionally in Detroit clubs. Her greatest influence was the Charlie Parker. And indeed, most of her influences have been instrumentalists rather than singers. Working chiefly with black musicians, she met with disapproval from the white community, but persisted with her career. She was a member of a vocal trio, Skeeter, Mitch, and Gene, who sang versions of Parker's solos in a manner akin to that of the later Lambert, Hendricks, and Ross. After moving to New York in the 1950s, she married Parker's pianist Duke Jordan and studied with Lenny Tristano. But it wasn't until the early 60s that she made her first recordings. One of these was under her own name. The other was The Outer View with George Russell, which featured a famous 10-minute version of You Are My Sunshine. Please give it up for Sheila Jordan. Dee Bridgewater, 2017 NEA Jazz Master. Triple Grammy Award winner, Tony winner, UN Goodwill Ambassador, producer, record label head, vocalist, jazz legend, global icon, and NPR Jazz Set host for 23 years. She was born in Memphis, Tennessee, raised in Flint, Michigan. Her career has always bridged musical genres. She earned her first professional experience as a member of the legendary Thad Jones Mel Lewis Big Band, and throughout the 70s, she performed with such jazz notables as Max Roach, Sonny Rollins, Dexter Gordon, my favorite, and Dizzy Gillespie. After a foray into the pop world during the 1980s, she relocated to Paris and began to turn her attention back to jazz. Bridgewater began self-producing with her 1993 album, Keepin' Tradition, and created DDB Records in 2006 when she signed with the Universal Music Group as a producer. Please give it up for Dee Bridgewater. Grammy Award-winning Kurt Elling. Renowned for his singular combination of robust swing and poetic insight, Grammy winner Kurt Elling has secured his place amongst the world's foremost jazz vocalists. Declared the standout male vocalist of our time by the New York Times, Elling has garnered unprecedented accolades, including a 14-year run atop the Downbeat Critics Bowl, a dozen Grammy nominations, and 8 Jazz Journalists Association awards for Male Singer of the Year. His voice is instantly recognizable, embracing listeners with his warm, rich baritone and navigating the full span of his 4-octave range as a virtuoso instrumentalist and a compelling storyteller. Whether transforming timeless standards or crafting his own enthralling originals, Elling balances elegant lyricism and technical mastery with wry humor, profound emotional depth, and keen observations into the human condition. Please give it up for Kurt Elling. All right, we're going to hit right on it. This question is open for everybody. What are your earliest memories of singing? Who inspired you? When did you know this was your calling?
Wow.
Sorry. Told you you're going to hit it.
Well, they said don't pay attention to these things. Can you all hear us? Okay, good afternoon. Well, good morning. I always sang. I thought everybody could sing. And it wasn't until I was 7 and my mother and my sister and I were singing a song, and my mom and sister were not singing the melody. And I kept saying, no, it goes like this. And they're like, that's what we're singing. And then I was like, oh. So yeah, that was my earliest. So yeah.
Kurt?
Probably everybody knows my father was a church musician by now, because I've said it about 100 million times. Like Dee Dee, I don't really remember a time not singing. I'm told, in a similar vein, that I was either making up or singing harmony parts in the hymns. When I was I used to think that was somebody just made that up in retrospect, but then my daughter started doing it when she was 2 or 3, and I said, okay, well, that really happens then. So for me, the music was always, it was always part and parcel of the transmission of spirit and of trying to heal and lift people up and get a message across. And it wasn't really, they used to play what they used to call music of your life stations in the car when we were driving across the country. So it was, Vic Damone and Peggy Lee and Nat Cole, that kind of a thing. And I remember we were watching a PBS back in the day, and maybe like a Woody Herman band from Lake Tahoe. And all the cats in the band had on black dinner suits, and it was so elegant and everything. And then Tony Bennett came on, and he had on a white dinner jacket. And he came out with a big smile, and I said, that's the guy you want to be in that band. You want to be that guy in the white dinner jacket.
Sheila?
So what's the question again?
The question was,
when you get old.
your earliest memories of singing. What inspired you?
I sang ever since I was 3 years old. I sang on the Michigan Theater at 3 years old. Came in second.
At 3 years old,
Yeah,
came in second.
came in second. Yes, I did, actually. But, I was a little kid. I was very unhappy as a kid. I had a terrible childhood. And so I singing songs made me feel better. So it was the way and I was always singing. My grandfather called me Little Song, because I never shut up. But, the first person I ever heard that I really wanted to try to sing as a singer, I love Billie Holiday. That feeling, nobody touched me like she did emotionally. But I heard Ella scatting on Lady Be Good, and I said, oh, man. So I scrubbed this woman's floors for 20 cents, and I went down on John R. in Detroit and bought Lady Be Good by Ella Fitzgerald and brought it home. Put it on the phonograph, the kind wind up. Was I kidding? Yeah. No way. Nobody could scat like Ella, and even to this day.
You are so
So I just listened and got inspired, but no, I could not do that. So that's how it started for me. But actually, my great influence was Charlie Parker. It was the Bird, always the Bird. I heard Bird, and that was it. 14 years old, I heard him on a recording, and that was it. Now's the time. Charlie Parker and his Reboppers. That was it.
You had a chance to meet him, right?
I married his piano player.
Could you share? I mean, we would love to know what was like.
Bird?
Yeah, what was Bird like?
Incredible, brilliant. He was a brilliant man. Unfortunately, he had a cunning, baffling, powerful disease, which I identify with because I've had them both, but not anymore, thank God. But Bird, at 34 years old, looked well into his 60s, and he was a genius. Nobody like him, to me anyway, to this day. Never heard anybody play like Bird, even touch it. Great human being, very helpful. You could ask him anything and he'd help you. Any young musician coming up, they'd go ask Bird, hey Bird, how do you do that? He'd show them. He was the greatest.
Sheila, you mentioned something about checking out Ella Fitzgerald on phonograph, and I had a question for everybody. How did you come about to studying scatting and improvising? How did you do it? Because today, a lot of vocalists, they love to, I want to scat, but how do you begin that journey? Because it's not just blah, 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 blah. What's the process of learning it?
My mother told me that I was scatting at 10 months old. She was a big fan of Ella Fitzgerald, and she said she would put Ella on the Victrola, and she said I would stand on the side of my crib, and I would just rock and scat with Ella. Of course, I'm sure, my mother swears that it was true. But I do know that when I was a teenager, I would go around the house listening to whatever records that my father would put on or my mom would put on, and I would just scat. So, like singing, I thought, oh, this is what people do, because it just was something that was second nature for me. I wanted to say, you tried to do Lady Be Good. I tried to do, when I was putting together my Dear Ella album, I spent an entire day trying to do Airmail Special.
Oh, that's a hard one.
Good luck, right?
That's a good one.
And that was a moment, because I don't listen to singers, because Thad Jones told me that if I wanted to have my own style, that I should only listen to instrumentalists, and so I really don't listen to singers. But, and I can't listen to Billie. Billie just tears me up. She just tears me up. And when people say, oh, I can listen to her all day, I'm like, Jesus, I would be slitting my wrist. I mean, I just feel all of that. I feel everything about her. But I spent this day trying to learn Airmail Special, trying to get her vocabulary, and that was the moment when I realized, oh, each of us has our own vocabulary. And Ella came from the swing era, I came from the bebop era. So my way of scatting is more bebop. So it was absolutely impossible. So I had to let that go. But I don't know. I mean, I could always do it. So I never, and people that say that they learned to do it, it sounds like it. I'm not saying that in a bad way, but it just doesn't have a kind of natural flow to it, to me.
I would suggest that the people who, I don't know who they are, whomever you're referring, they probably just haven't worked hard enough yet.
Okay, that's a good way to say it.
Because,
No, that's true.
well, because there's, as human beings, if you want something desperately enough, and you have enough of a gift from God in your voice, and you are dedicated enough, then nothing really. You're the only thing in your own way. That and the possibility that you as a student have not listened deeply enough to hear the difference between what you are doing and what you are trying to do.
Okay.
Because the information exists, it's the same. The art of improvisational scatting really follows the same rules as anything that an instrumentalist follows. The changes are the same, and whether you breathe or not, and high notes and low notes, and many notes or few notes or whatever it is. And if they can figure it out, nobody was born with a saxophone in their mouth. So, I mean, it can be done. Many of the techniques, if you aren't going to rely upon your God-given gifts and the experience that came to you and the things that you were able to absorb very easily as a young person and rely upon through the rest of your career, then you need to study whatever it is that you need to study in order to get those sounds out and accomplish that and reach around and learn those things. You need to learn to think like a composer and to make decisions. And the best way to do that is to slow your expectations down, to learn to be comfortable creating melody just over one chord. What sounds good? What doesn't sound as good in this chord? What did somebody else play? What did, you mentioned Dexter Gordon. Talk about steal from the rich. Learn what did he play? When did he breathe? Can you breathe the same way? Same thing with Frank Sinatra, or, even non-improv, Shirley Horn. How much space is there in, I mean, it's all there to be learned. I don't think there's any magic, pixie dust or anything like that. I came to swinging music, relatively late. I wasn't raised with it, but I wanted it. And I therefore hung out with every instrumentalist who would give me the time of day, and I studied every note Jon Hendricks ever sang, and I tried to figure out how come Mark Murphy was so weird and so brilliant at the same time, and Dave Lambert and Sheila, and it can all be done. It's as with anything else in life. If you want it enough, that's really the only advice for scatting or for creating a situation for yourself in this music or any other. If you want it enough, there's no one road. There's the road that you're on.
Yes.
And there are the answers to the questions that you have to face. And if you are diligent and smart and courageous and risk-taking, and you really, really have to be smarter than anybody else who's competing for the same situation. If you can do all those things, then chances are you'll figure out what it is that you need to figure out to get there. And you can do that in school, or you can do that just by going to the University of Jam Session. But you have to do whatever that series of things is to get there.
I'm going to tell you what I tell my students. First thing, learn the original tune.
Yes.
Exactly as it's written.
Yes.
If you know what was there in the beginning, you'll never, ever get messed up. Ooh, I almost said the F word. But, and if you learn the original melody, then once you learn this is how I do it. I learn the original melody, then I learn guide tones from the chord changes. And then I sing on the guide tones. And that's what I teach all my students. But you gotta learn the melody first, the original melody. Then the guide tones, then you get a little guide tone. I mean, if horn players can go into their pads and practice without a rhythm section, you as a singer should be able to do that. And you can do that if you learn the original melody, then get yourself the chord changes, and then get yourself a little guideline on those chord changes. You could do 20 million solos by yourself and get very tired. Thank you.
I have another question jumping on that. How important is it for the vocalist to access an instrument while developing and learning how to sing or to scat? Because I find that sitting at the piano is the most valuable resource. And was it for you too while you were studying? How did you incorporate that?
Well, I don't know how to play any other instrument. Unfortunately, as a kid, I was taking piano lessons, and then I had a great aunt that used to beat my hands with a ruler, and they were black and blue because I have small hands. And I had to stop taking piano lessons, and I was terrified of piano for years because I'd always see her coming after me. But I think it's very important. If you have a chance to learn another instrument, absolutely. I was not in that position to be able to do that. That's me. I don't know about these two wonderful singers.
I cannot play an instrument. I cannot read music. I'm able, as I've gotten older and people keep putting sheet music in front of me, I've been able to kind of follow a melody. So for me, what was always important was, like you said, to really pay attention to the melody if you know the melody, then you always know where you have to go back to, where you have to fall to. So I remember when I was really paying attention to my scatting, and I was really trying to become more syncopated, and I became fascinated with rhythm and with the drums and with the polyrhythms. I would work on a song and where I was really trying to get my scatting to go fast, but I mean, if any of you know my scatting, I can't really do it, but the melody would become like a ticker tape in my head. And so I knew, I always had this ticker tape going across my brain that, okay, I can go here, there, and because I had an ear that I still rely on, I could hear where I needed to fall. But then I started to just take risks and just hit notes. And I could hear that those notes would be outside of the chord that was being played. But Thad Jones had always told me there are no wrong notes. And so if I would hit a note and it would kind of jar against what was being played, what was being laid down by the musicians, or if I was just with a pianist or just with a bassist, whatever the situation was, Thad would say, hit that note again, so that it seems like it's deliberate, you know, but I would say probably, see, I don't even know what you're talking about when you say what did you say, that the tonal, the what?
The guide tone?
Yeah, the guide tones. I don't know
I'll
what that
show you
is.
later.
I don't know what that is. So I mean, I'm from a very, I mean, maybe I know it, but I'd never heard that. I'd never heard that before. But so I'm very basic. I mean, my music was just always there, and I just have always had a, you know, everybody in the Thad Jones Melloist Orchestra called me Big Ears because they said I could hear anything, and so I've just always tried to trust what I'm hearing and know that it's gonna be okay. Whatever I'm gonna put out there, it's gonna be okay. And if it sounds strange to me, then I try and resolve it in a way that it'll fall back into what most people consider to be normal. So I don't know. I mean, I was gonna ask you, Kurt, about your scatting, because I just had the opportunity to sit at Kurt's show for the very first time ever, when he was at Birdland, and I just found your performance was so fascinating to me, and the way you hear was so fascinating to me. So I want to pick your brain, but I won't do it in front of all these people. But how do you approach your scatting? Because the way you perform, I assumed that you play the piano.
I don't play piano in front of people.
But you can play?
That would be a real
But can you play?
bringer downer. I play enough to pick through things and to play some essential ingredients.
Okay.
But I would hesitate to say I play the piano by any stretch. But what I strive for are, I strive for actual melodies. I strive to play I want to sing in tune. I want my ideas to be clear. I want them to have a coherent experience for people. And I try as I might. I try not to repeat myself, although I know I'm guilty of it. We all have things that we fall back on. But it's a lifelong study, and my approach is, I think it's kind of the same as a lot of players. It's an incremental, lifelong experience, and you try to keep learning more and overcome. Branford, hanging out with Branford for that 2 years when we were touring Upward Spiral was fascinating and mind-blowing, and it reminded me of my earliest years of working with Von Freeman back in Chicago and Ed Peterson and other tenor players who would pull my ear about certain things. You know, we came off of the road at the halfway break, and I was always pestering him, pestering Brant, you know, like, hey man, so I'm sorry, I'm not. He's like, don't worry about, you know. Well, he would tell me all kinds of things, but the one story I wanted, the one I want to get to is on the Christmas break. He wrote me an email and he said, dear Kurt, resolutions for you for whatever year it was, for the new year. 1, no more starting ideas on the minor 9. 2, what was the other one? You know, there were like three really like specific things. Like, you have these habits, here they are. And of course he could hear those and every other pitfall, because that's Branford. And sure enough, you know, I came, you know, I'm like, okay. And I wrote him back and I said, I'm on it. He says, I know. So, you know, it's a lifelong thing. When I listen back to the recordings I made 25 years ago, I can hear everything that I didn't know, and everything I wished that I would have known. I wish that I would have edited myself significantly more and let somebody else who knew what they were doing do the playing. Until I got reasonably okay at it, and I hope that, you know, inshallah, in 25 years, if I'm singing then, that I look back and I hear the stuff that I'm doing now, and I say, man, I wish I would have known then what I know now, because that's the best thing that we can do with our time, is to continue to learn.
Yes.
And getting more, because the music deserves it, because it's, you know, people have died for this, and it's easy for me to get on a thing about it. The music deserves the highest dedication, and I'm here to give it that.
Yeah, I just want to quickly add something to that. Years ago, I was singing, and this is one thing about when we're improvising, scatting, is that, gee, that was a terrible chorus. I'll do another one. This one will be better. It isn't. I'll do another one. This one will be better. It isn't. I must have been doing about 28 choruses to a tune one night. And all of a sudden, Charlie Parker's voice came into my head, and I'll never forget it. He said, if you can't say it in 2 choruses, you'll never say it. And I said, oh, shit. I never forgot that.
Well, I asked that question about if you happen to tinker a piano, because a lot of instrumentalists, I noticed, they try to mimic the human voice on their horn. And it's interesting how instrumentalists, they try to be like a vocalist on their horn, but vocalists try to be like an instrumentalist with their voice. Yeah. And this leads to my next question. How do you study phrasing when you're singing a song, when you pick a song? How do you pick a song that's for you? How do you know it's for you? And how do you develop making that piece your own when you're performing it? Because that's something I feel like is always an important point to talk about as vocalists.
I can talk on that for a minute. You know what I'm going to do? I'm going to talk on it. That's right. Quickly. First of all, the first thing I listen for is the melody. If the melody sucks, I don't want anything to do with it. I don't want to change it around. I want what's there to begin with. If the lyrics are terrible, but the melody's beautiful, that's cool. You know why? Because I can change the lyrics. So that's how I approach it. Great melodies. I want to hear a melody that touches my heart, and I feel, oh man, I can get off on that. And then if the lyrics, as I said, are bad, I'll change them. That's how I do it. What do you do, Kurt?
Most of the things that happen in the final if we're speaking about analysis of what makes it on a record or what makes it into a performance, for me, and I would assume for others, there's a very heavy intuitive assessment. You have to, as Sheila said, you have to feel a thing. You have to, in my case, I have to feel not only the possibility of a relationship with a piece, but the possibility that that relationship could grow into something substantially more signature. How can I meet this composition halfway? In my case, I'm very fortunate because thanks to John Hendricks, the door of lyric writing opened up, and I've been able to have some success making more I can take Body and Soul, and there were already 2 or 3 very, very well-known lyrics to Body and Soul, and I waited around for the right Dexter Gordon solo, and because I knew I wanted it to be him, and then when the circumstances were right, then I understand what I can do, what I can add to this now. I understand what I can bring to this. I have to be careful with certain kinds of songs and certain pieces of spoken word because and I don't mean to say this by way of patting myself on the back, but there's a definitive power in what we do, in the way an audience feels during a performance and at the end of the night. And I've experimented with certain lyrics and certain compositions that I was writing for characters, say for instance for this radio show, The Big Blind, and I would lay it out in a couple of situations, and because the song itself was so threatening, intended to be threatening, frightening, angry, I really had a hard time pulling the audience back out of that by the end of the set. And I noticed a very distinct, different experience for me and for my audience in the room. And I don't want to have my audience be frightened or unless I really have a real specific reason to do it, like I'm trying to get to a certain number of people who I know happen to be out there, and I'm going to mess with them really hard. But a regular audience, that's not what I want. So I'm careful. I'm careful, even though I can produce that. I don't want that. That's not what I'm singing for. It's a long-winded answer. There's an intuitive process, and for me, there has to be a combination of the original composition existing in a state that is beautifully crafted, and that it has the possibility of something that I haven't heard somebody else do with it, to it, because of it, perhaps in juxtaposition. Maybe it's a medley, maybe it's the time feel, maybe it's writing a lyric for somebody's solo. But I need to find as signature an event as I can, because the so-called Great American Songbook is so wonderful and rich and valuable, but people aren't coming out to hear me sing straight thing. I have a point of view, and Dee Dee has a point of view, and Sheila, God bless her, has a distinct point of view. And that's the jazz idiom, is that you come out to hear people who sound like themselves. So.
Very important. Thank you.
I feel like I'm sitting between two wanderlusts here, these two astounding people on either side of me. I think I'm very simple. For me, I pick a song because it's telling a story. As I'm getting older, the story is becoming more and more important. And for me, although I am able to write, maybe it's just I've never felt secure enough in my writing or when I've written, people haven't remarked on it, and so I said, well, it must not be. Oh well, So I started out thinking of myself as a traditional jazz singer and wanting to continue the idea of the Ella Fitzgeralds and the Sarah Vaughns and the Billie Holidays and the Carmen McRaes. And so, and recently I said, let me really start listening to Betty Carter. So I'm starting to do tunes that Betty recorded, and I'm trying to take her arrangements and do them close to her arrangements, because it is allowing me to listen to another way of phrasing other than the way that I tend to phrase. But I would say that what's most important for me is the melody. I used to be into songs that had nice melodies and the stories were trite, and I would be in the middle of a song, and then I would be changing, a line of the lyric. But, and then I said, well, I'll just scat. And then it just became about scatting that melody. But now, because I've scatted so much, and I think that's something that is that people think about when they think of me as a singer, I want to just sing now and scat less, and really see what that does. Because as a jazz singer, I always thought part of being a jazz singer was being able to scat. And so I'm fascinated with, some of the young singers like Cecile McLaurin-Salvant, to name someone in particular, she's an amazing scatter. Absolutely amazing. But you wouldn't know that, because she chose not to. And we sat and had a conversation about it. And I said, but, Cecile, you've got to. She says, that's not what I want to do, Dee Dee. I want to tell the story. And then I'm looking at this amazing career that this young woman has had, which then says, and what I use from Cecile's success is that Cecile made a conscious decision that she wanted to do something specific, and she has stuck with that. And she is one of the most brilliant storytellers. She's spellbinding for me when she tells her stories. And so I think, the thing is, for anybody that is singing, is you have to know your instrument. And if you are going to be an interpreter of song, I just say to these young kids, you've got to pick a song that speaks to you so you can tell that story. And if you can't find that story, then you've got to write that story. And we all hear melodies in our heads. All of us. We walk around and, we all will hum something, and so I think it's just about then sitting down, like Kurt was saying, and paying attention to that. Write it down or record it, because that's what I would have to do. I'd have to record that melody and then start to tell your story. So I think it's all about the storytelling, and if you want in your story to then go into some improvisation where you do a vocalese, you don't have to necessarily scat. I was asked to do A Night in Tunisia, but Chaka Khan's version, because I was asked to do it with this young band, Revive Big Band. And Chaka doesn't scat, but man, on that recording of hers, those notes that she chose to hit, that was scatting. Because what is scatting? Why is it that it has to be about sounding like an instrument as opposed to just hitting some notes and, doing those kinds of phrases? So that was about as jazz as it could get, You know, when I was listening to Shaka's version of A Night in Tunisia, so that has caused me to go back and go, oh yeah, right. It doesn't have to be all these notes, you know? And so, as Kurt was saying, you know, we are constantly learning. And I think that the thing that is important is if we ever get to a moment where we're not trying to push ourselves and continue to learn, then we need to stop. Because there's no more art. There's no more creativity. We've gotten too comfortable, you know? So we can't, none of us, and I think that's a life story. We cannot be comfortable in our lives. As long as we have the gift of getting up every day, we have to try and make something of that day and that moment. And it's the same thing in music, I think, you know? And we have to try to, I used to really feel insecure if I'd be in a room. Well, I still get very insecure. I get very insecure. I shared with Kurt, we were together last night, and I'm doing some work with Bill Charlap, just in duo. And before I go to sing with Bill, I get extremely insecure, because I haven't been in that naked of a setting where it's just the voice and the piano. I've had all this music surrounding me, and so I really question. I question my abilities. And I mean, I have to talk myself off the ledge, as Kurt saw.
Which she beautifully did.
Yeah, but not after a nice glass of red wine. Yes.
Yeah,
know,
that's why
and
you
just
had that
thinking
big
about it.
role in the jazz opera with George Grunst.
Oh, but isn't this true? I mean, it's about all of us. First of all, embracing who we are and not trying to be like somebody else. Because when we do these workshops and these kids come in and I hear these kids and I'm like, baby, can I hear your voice? Yes. You know, I hear who you've been listening to, but where's your voice? I had a little girl recently who was so terrified, and her teacher said to me, oh, you're gonna really love her. She's gonna blow you away. And she got up and she started singing, and she started singing with this voice. And then her improvisation was very minimal, and he's saying to me, but this isn't how she really is. I said, well, I think this is her real voice. I think this is her real voice. And she was so upset. She left the room. I had to go and get her, and she came back in, and she said, that was not my voice. And I said, okay, well, then sing in your voice. And she went to sing again, and it was the same voice. And I said, baby, this is your voice. This is your voice. This is that voice that when you take everything away, when you strip all of the stuff away and all the practice and all of that stuff away, this is you. So you need to start working with this voice and not this voice that you've heard in your head that you think you should sound like. And it was a beautiful voice, you know, and her teacher wrote me a letter and he said, she's now singing in her voice. You helped her discover. I said, I didn't do it. Her fear pushed her away from all of the stuff that she had practiced and standing in front of the mirror as a teenager. And all of a sudden this voice came out, and it's a fabulous voice, so that's all I have to say.
To jump on that, Sheila and Kurt, have you ever experienced moments of vulnerability in performing?
Sure, of course.
Vulnerability.
Yes. So the amount of risk that we're called upon to take starts from the first time you get up at the first jam session. To try to remember the words and try to remember how it goes and the thing and the, you know, oh, I don't forget, oh my God, I got to signal the, you know, from the most rudimentary experience of singing, because you're not, because you are already a soloist, you are an individual voice, there's nothing to hide behind. neither should you desire to hide behind anything. The experience is one of self-expression. I think what people tend to fear is the judgment of other people, the self-judgment that one is inarticulate relative to what one would like to, how one would like to be. And there are legitimate reasons to feel inarticulate. Maybe you're inarticulate. If you, it kind of returns us again to my earlier point. If you want to feel self-confident, then you will do the work that it takes so that when you come to the stage or you interact with other musicians, you will have the tools and you will be prepared and you will be, and I don't mean memorizing everything, I mean being prepared to engage. I'm doing a duo tour with Danilo Perez this summer, and we're putting a record out. And talk about exposure. Here's Danilo, and he's the first time we get together to do a show together. He says, I said, man, how do you want to start? He says, I don't want to start with no music. You come out, and you're going to play something, or I'm going to play something, but we don't know what that is. And then we wait, and we listen, and then we're going to find it, man, and then we stay. So every time we come out, our first thing that we do is it's not a song. It's like one of us starts and then we go, and that's from his years with Wayne. And Danilo's had to learn to be fearless in that position. We all have a certain amount. But Wayne, and because I've been having these heavy conversations with Danilo, Wayne talks about you don't need to work on your ear training. You need to work on your fear training. You need to be prepared to say, I don't know what's going to happen, and I'm going to go anyway. It is the definition of courage. I tell my daughter, my definition of courage is not that you are unafraid. It is that you are afraid and you act anyway. So in the music calls for a certain, I hesitate to use the word fearlessness because you still do have the energy of anticipation, and there is no net, or the net is the band. The net is Danilo when the two of us are there, or when I was out with Branford, the net was Branford, or Joey Colorazzo, and I would say, man, I'm really sorry I didn't hit these changes, or I didn't do this right, and Branford would say, what are you talking about changes? You might care about the changes. They just want you to get out there and swing real hard, take it out, whap them across the face with it a bunch of times, and walk away. Doesn't matter about it. I was like, well, that's one way to look at it, I suppose. But if he didn't say that, if he didn't say something like that, he would say, man, I got you. I got you. I always got you. Whew. If that doesn't make you feel, those are the people that you want to work. So and Bill Charlotte's got you.
Oh, I know Bill has me. I know, thank God.
Yeah, man. I mean, he's right there. He's right there in it with you. So, okay, so then what we're talking about is the natural trepidation of exposure, and that the performance that one comes across with, might not be to the highest caliber that you're capable of.
Yes.
Okay. You got to be willing to sound bad, to sound good.
Yes.
You got to sing anyway. You got to
Yes.
just put it out and listen harder,
Yes.
and wait more and learn more and think about and consider it. It's why, again, it's a lifelong thing. You're going to trip over it. You're going to step in it. It's going to be a problem. And if you're a strong enough musician, you will seek out these times of being challenged. I'm killing myself trying to find stuff that is worth people coming out to hear me sing. Not because I'm a flagellant or something, man, but because it's a really important time, and there's important music that needs to be sung, and that music is going to be a real challenge to sing, to create. to engage with collaborators whose experience or expertise is in an area that is not my expertise. That's part of the task, is to continue to try to set your own cliches, to recognize your own cliches, and to set them aside, and to create new cliches, to create new habits. And then when they are comfortable enough, then you put those aside. And then you go the next round and the next thing. So the fear is just part of the thing. And it's frankly the thing that gets you to practice enough so that you sound good doing whatever it is you're doing.
Exactly.
I don't want to sound like mess on this gig with these people, therefore I had better sit down and work my thing.
Right.
So that kind of that's only good. You should be afraid of that because the audience is paying money and they deserve a high quality experience. And the music deserves why would somebody else call you on a gig if you weren't going to come through for them? I don't know. I talk too much.
No, you don't.
But it's good.
Can I have
Absolutely,
something?
absolutely.
Let me
This is good.
Okay, you said Bill has my back. Bill and I have had a few rehearsals, and then we did a few dates last year, and so we're gonna probably do an album. But when we were rehearsing this last time with the intention of beginning to select songs for this eventual album, I said, Bill, you remember how terrified I was when we did our first dates. And I said, I just want you to know that when I'm insecure, there are certain things that happen to me. I get what we call cotton mouth. And all of a sudden I have no saliva. It's just dry. My throat becomes completely dry. I cannot hear. I can't hear. So you can lay something down and I don't hear it. I don't know what this is. So I said, Bill, there's just something about the two of us getting out there, and I know you got me, and I hear it. I said, but when we start, I can't hear. Okay. And this is my thing. And so when we sat down to play a song it's a song I've been singing since I started singing professionally. And he lays out this beautiful chord, and I didn't hear. I didn't hear anything. It was Here's That Rainy Day last night. And I looked at him, and I must have looked like a deer in the headlights. And so he did another run, and he threw in the note, the first note. And it snapped me out of it. It snapped me out of it, and I heard. And then I was able to start the song. And afterwards I said, oh God, Bill, thank you. And he said, I heard what you told me, Dee Dee. He said, so you never have to be afraid. If you don't start, I'll just go again. And I'll put that note in, or I'll do whatever it is that you need to do. So I say that to say to you, if there are any of you who are here, who, your careers are, whatever stage they are, it is so important to work with musicians who will have your back. And it is so important to develop the respect for all the musicians that you will work with, because they will have your back if you give them the respect. Amen. And so, I sought Bill out. Bill was in his own world. I woke up one day and it said Bill Charlap, and I said, what? And it said Bill Charlap, and I said, okay. And so I sought him out to do this thing because I haven't been in this kind of a naked space in so long. I've loved to surround myself with all this wall-to-wall sound. But I think it's important for you all to know that no matter what stage you can be at in a career, you can still have this kind of thing happen to you, okay? So, and I shared that with Kurt last night. Okay, what, Kurt?
Well, I want to encourage you in a real specific way. The musical experience that you have been having has been so broad and so diverse. And at the same time, there are certain aspects to your métier that are your signature elements. That is we all have our places where we're more comfortable, where we tend to gravitate, where we tend to go. And your extremely beautifully soulful, free, liberated delivery of the spirit through music is only one way that I could put the way that you naturally exist. And Bill Charlap, just for this one example, comes from an extremely tailored avenue where, it's a bespoke suit. He knows every note in every chord that he plays, and he knows that he could play the voicing on a given chord 15 other ways. And each way would sound expressive and brilliant, and it would be perfectly acclimated. His touch is so deft. So my point is, broadness of Dee Dee's experience, or of my experience, because I'll say this about myself, I'm hoping to do duet dates with Bill as well. And when that time comes around, I'm going to have to rein in the thing that I naturally do in order to acclimate myself to a certain way of approaching the songs. And it's much more out of a highly sophisticated harmonic sense, a highly developed touch on the piano, a highly, I want to say, almost more structured way of thinking about comping and about approaching these classic songs. And my thing, like yours, while different in general trajectory, is a little more wild. And it needs a haircut if I'm going to work with Bill Charlap. For there to be a meeting. And that would be a reason for me, that would be my reason to say, I gotta practice these songs really hard, because he's coming from this avenue. So he would definitely support me as much as he's gonna support Dee Dee on this tour, but it's for the two, if you're gonna go in a duet setting, then each party has got to read up and study up on the other person. For instance, so Danilo comes to me and we're doing all these things, and it's not just a free-for-all like that. He comes to me and he says, man, I have this tune for you. And he starts to play it, and I'm like, dude, where is one in this tune? He said, right here. It's right here, man. It's in 13. It's a bespoke. It's in 13. It's a clave in 13. I'm like, I am not gonna get this. You're gonna get it, man. You're gonna get it. And we play it a month goes by, and he's like, you're coming closer. I'm like, I am not coming closer. No, but you're gonna come closer. Is it fear, or is it just I have more work to do so I can get to the place to work with this person? So,
well, my feeling on that is no, then he needs to compromise, and he needs to come to a place where you're both comfortable.
I'll be comfortable enough.
Good for you.
Sheila,
I'm gonna have that, mother.
Sheila, would you like to add to that question? Have you ever had times of feeling vulnerable when you perform or when you're trying to
Never.
prepare?
It's what I love to do. I mean, I don't think about it. One of the things, I work with a lot of young musicians all over the world now because I love to give them a chance to play and be heard. So they're from their own country, and they call me, and I say, yeah, as long as you swing and you can read, we'll be cool. And I go over there, and the first thing I say to them is, play for me like you would an instrumentalist. I don't need a whole lot of stuff. Just play like you would an instrumentalist, and we never have a problem. No, I don't get into all that. I just want to do the music, you know. What?
This is
And
why I
teach
want to
it,
grow up and be like Sheila Jordan.
No. But the point is with the young people coming up, it's don't give up. I got to tell you something. Years ago, if you tried to get a gig in a club, and they'd say, "Oh, a chick singer?" I don't think so. We had a hard time, especially if you were a woman singer. Guys, too, had problems. They just didn't want to hire jazz singers. It was all the instrumentalists didn't want a singer. You know, it's changed a lot. And I always say this to them. I say this to the young rhythm sections. I say, don't put singers down, man. First of all, you're going to learn new tunes that you never heard of, okay? You're going to learn how to swing, how to play for a singer. Every singer is different. And guess what? They get the gigs. I've been singing this music since I was 14. I just turned 91. I mean, you know, it's my life. And also this, singers, sometimes you're going to have to support the music until it can support you. That doesn't mean you won't find a place to sing. I did. Made $6 a night. Paid the babysitter $3, took a taxi home, and had $1 left. But I had a day job. Yes. So I supported the music until it could support me, and I waited. But I wasn't into, oh, am I going to make it? No. It didn't matter to me as long as I could sing once or twice a week. And one of the pianists that I worked with, you guys were talking about Danilo and those cats. The cat I worked with, who was out of this world, probably nobody knows his name, you two will know, Herbie Nichols. Sing with Herbie Nichols, man. He took me on a musical trip one night. You know, there's times in our lives when we leave our bodies. It doesn't happen a lot for me. I don't know about anybody else, but you'll reach a point where you'll absolutely remove yourself. And this person will be singing, and you'll be up here floating around. It's a floating situation. And I had a couple of those in my life. Oh, they're fantastic. And one of them was with Herbie Nichols, and we were doing Love for Sale, which I never sang. But I sang it with Herbie Nichols. So anyway, all I'm telling the singers is just keep singing, man. Don't give up. Don't let anybody put you down. They try to tell you, oh, no, that ain't it, blah, 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 blah. Take what you want and leave the rest.
And on that note, we're going to open up the floor for some questions. We have a few minutes, so we just ask that you know exactly what you want to ask, keep it short and quick, and we'll try our best to answer the question for you. We have 2 mics here. Please feel free to come on down and come to the mic.
I just want to say to Miss Dee Dee Bridgewater, I can't tell you how encouraged I am to hear you say everything that you just said. Like, I'm a young singer from Buffalo, New York, and just to see you say that you get insecure and you still feel vulnerable has been, I think that is so humbling. And just to see you walk in that truth at this level in your life and in your career, it just speaks to who you are as a person. And it is so encouraging to me. So thank you for sharing what you did.
You are so welcome. I think I'm striving to be Sheila Jordan. I'm striving to be around another 20 years. But I don't think that Kurt or I would be where we are in our careers if we had not kept humility. You know, you have to keep your ego in check. And you have to stay humble. There is always going to be somebody else that can outdo you. You know, and I'm at a place, I'm going to say this, I'm at a place in my career, I'm going to be 70 this year, and I have noticed, that's not to get any applause, I have noticed that for the female singer, when we hit 70, we start becoming irrelevant. There's something in our society that does not allow the female, maybe our female musicians can do this and stay in this longer without being beat up, but we start getting beat up. So I have really been, for some reason, that's become very crystal clear to me right now. Ooh, I have to stay relevant. So what I'm trying to do is put myself, I worked with this young trumpet player, Theo Croker, and I worked with his band, and I allowed him to do the musical direction and to make the suggestions, and so we went places that I just would not have gone. He wanted to explore my past. I was like, ooh. And in so doing, it allowed me to go, oh, you've done some cool stuff. But I'm trying to keep myself open and listen to younger people and to accept their ideas and then to try and help them with their ideas. But also in so doing, it takes me to another place of vulnerability. And then when I shared with you all about Bill Charlap. But stay humble. Stay humble. We don't have to be here. Be grateful. Be grateful for every gig you get. Be grateful to all of the people who help to put together the one gig you do. Each gig you do takes a village to get it together. Do you know what I'm saying? So, and a lot of times singers, I notice, are become presumptuous. And singers, I find in workshops, think of themselves as being out front and by themselves, and the musicians are just behind them. And those are the singers that I say, you need to stop. You need to just go and do something else, because you are in your own world and you're not hearing and you're not sharing, and this isn't what you need to do. Because I'm going to tell you, as sure as I'm sitting in front of you, you will not have a career. And I'm watching one young lady, and she's not having a career because she didn't listen, and she stays in her head, and she stays in front of the band and not with the band. There's no communication. This is, when we are on the stage, we create a family. Whether it's 2 people or 3 people or 4 people, however many we are a family in that moment. So if we are not sharing with every member of that family, and if we are not holding a truthful dialogue, we don't need to be up there. Okay? So singers, please remember that. Because, music, and then you get a reputation, and musicians will say, oh no, don't work with that one because she's not interested, or he's not interested. Okay?
Hi, Dennis Naranja, Orange Tree Media from Michigan. First of all, two quick things. My applause to Kurt Elling, Dee Dee Bridgewater, and Sheila Jordan. On behalf of everybody here, your great contributions to the American art form of jazz. Thank you so much. You all have experience singing in front of large ensembles / big bands, accompanying duo or small trio work. I wanted to ask each of you, if you would just give a quick answer, which do you prefer as far as being in an open space, accompanying another pianist, or do you actually prefer large ensemble or more accompaniment to your singing? Do you actually have a preference?
I can answer that. My favorite way to sing is with the bass and voice. I started it in the early 50s with Steve Swallow, and a guy came in at the Toronto Jazz Festival at the club and said, "Where's the piano? Where's the drums?" I said, "In my head, man, in my head."
It's fun to sing in every configuration. They have different charms. Singing with just a bass player is a lot of exposure, but it means that you have a lot more harmonic freedom, and you can turn in any direction at any time. With just the right piano player, it's like driving a sports car around or something. as opposed to with Metropole Orchestra or with a great big band. It's you put that truck in gear, and it's just going to go down the highway, and it's for you not to get run over. Yeah. But you are still technically you are still driving. It is still for whoever's in front to put it in gear and to help the band swing, to invite it to swing as hard as it can swing. You know, so I like to sing real loud, so that all works for me. But they all have their charms.
I'm sorry to do this, everybody, but I'm getting the signal that we ran out of time. But please give a round of applause for our wonderful panelists, Sheila Jordan, Dee Dee Bridgewater, Kurt Elling. I'm your host, Camille Thurman. Thanks so much for joining us this afternoon.
You so much.
We hope to see you again soon. Take care.
Singers keep singing.